Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, a look at the Oslo Accords 30 years later. What were the promises made and what have been the results? And a new embassy opens in Jerusalem. We'll hear from a friend of Israel who was there. Plus, crossing cultural and religious boundaries to help women succeed, an innovative program called Fem Forward. We'll also see the creative work of 3 female ultra-Orthodox visionaries. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Thousands of Israelis took to the streets this week in support of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to reform the country's judicial system. The protesters rallied outside of Israel's Supreme Court on Thursday. They believe an overhaul of the judicial system is needed to rein in the power of unelected judges who they say abuse their authority.
I'm here because we had enough of one side only demonstrating, talking, expressing views which are completely not representing the major part of the Israeli society. And it's about time that silent majority will also raise its voice.
Meanwhile, Israelis who oppose the changes see the judicial reform efforts as a power grab by Netanyahu and say it will weaken the government's checks and balances. Next Tuesday, the Supreme Court is scheduled to hold a hearing on the legality of the first major judicial reform bill. Well, decades after a celebrated peace agreement, violence continues between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. Today, a look at why some believe the Oslo Accords never had a chance at success. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the story.
In 1993, President Bill Clinton had great hopes for the Oslo Accords.
The goal was to bring about peace between Israel and the Palestinians, to stop the bloodletting on both sides, and to really get to a situation where both sides could live together peacefully, one next to the other.
PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin shook hands on the White House lawn after signing the deal that Clinton himself referred to as a brave gamble.
Whilst Israel and the Israeli representatives were so desperate for peace, so hungry to bring about this new generation, this new Middle East, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat, remained terrorists throughout the process.
Legal analyst Maurice Hirsch says the Accords never had a chance because the Palestinians didn't consider them as peace agreements.
Yasser Arafat, soon after they were signed, likened the Accords to the Hudaybiyah agreement that Muhammad signed, which he then used almost as a Trojan horse to conquer Mecca. And the PLO never gave up on what it said was its 10-point plan. This was a plan that it adopted already in the 1970s that says we will take any territory given to us and then use that territory as a basis to continue attacking Israel and to bring about its ultimate demise.
Italian journalist Fiamma Nierenstein interviewed Arafat shortly before the signing.
I took out a map of Israel. I gave it to him with a pen in the other hand, and I told him, please draw a line where you want the border of the Palestinian state to be drawn. He got furious at me.
Nierenstein says from Arafat's point of view, he saw the agreement as another way to attack the existence of Israel, a subject she wrote about many times.
It was almost a mortal sin not to agree with the idea that we were going through a period that was supposed to become one of the best and most important moments in the history of peace.
Believing Arafat had actually changed, she says it appeared Israel ignored his years of terror, like the 1972 massacre of Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics.
Israel was mesmerized by the idea of becoming a normal country while was vanishing in the air, even the memory of how terrible all of these years until the very moment when they had to meet.
Peace from the Accords not only didn't materialize, it got blown out of the water less than 10 years later by the Second Intifada.
What was most astonishing for me was not only the dismissing of all the terror against the Jews. What was the most amazing thing was how Israel was implementing, while the other side was doing nothing.
Since the 1993 signing, Palestinian terrorists have killed some 2,000 Israelis, and the result hasn't been good for the Palestinian people either.
In 30 years, they've managed to take Palestinian Authority from a society which wanted peace, to re-educate them, to brainwash them into hating more and more Israel, and then sending their children literally to die.
Watchdog groups like Palestinian Media Watch regularly document how Palestinian television, school textbooks, and camps encourage violence against Israel.
They've given them knives and guns in their hands and sent them to kill Israelis. And then when they die, they use them almost as cannon fodder to attack Israel. Well, look how many Palestinian children Israel has killed. Completely without context, complete without saying, well, we sent them to die in order to use them to attack Israel.
In spite of this, Palestinians and their allies have managed to convince many in the international community that Israel is the villain.
You know how just defaming Israel at the very core of its existence, saying that it is an apartheid state, that it committed a genocidal act, trying to delegitimate Israel from the side of the human rights.
And now, evidence is emerging of a third party financing and organizing this hatred instead of what's appeared as Palestinians carrying out isolated attacks.
These are people that are connected by the money, the weapons, and the hate for Israel that is typical of an international ring that has his main center in Iran. Iran has entered the game.
Hirsch sees the best way forward as convincing world leaders that the Oslo paradigm has failed.
We have to see that peace, for example, between Israel and Saudi Arabia is first and foremost an interest of both countries. The Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas, who has denied his people a democracy, has incentivized and rewarded terrorism, has rejected every single offer for peace that Israel has made.
Nierenstein adds that while continuing U.S. support is positive, the Jewish state's only hope is to be strong in itself. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, the ever-growing list of countries standing with Israel and placing their embassies in Jerusalem. In recent years, as a show of support for Israel and its thousands of years of history, some countries have moved their embassies from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. President Trump led the way by moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem in 2018, and other countries soon followed. Also in 2018, Guatemala moved its embassy to Jerusalem, and in March 2021, Kosovo located its embassy in Israel's capital. 3 months later, Honduras followed suit. And last month, one more country pledged to establish an embassy to Jerusalem in the future, the West African nation of Sierra Leone. This week, a fifth country joined the U.S., Honduras, Guatemala, and Kosovo by moving its embassy to Jerusalem, Papua New Guinea. I spoke with a friend of ours who attended that historic event, Thomas Sandell from the European Coalition for Israel. Thomas Sandell, founder of the European Coalition for Israel, great to be with you here in Jerusalem. Also here in Jerusalem, number 5, the fifth nation, has actually moved their embassy here to Jerusalem. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was very honored and privileged to be part of that historic event last night when Papua New Guinea opened their embassy in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but I think the speech that the Prime Minister gave, how he explained that this was a biblical principle, this was a way for Papua New Guinea to honor the God of Israel. He explained, for example, he said, well, what your people have done to us is to preserve. You gave us the Bible, you preserved the Bible, you were the custodians for so many years, you protected it with your lives, and we are so grateful. And this is just one little way for us to pay back and to pay tribute to Israel.
You're on the front lines of diplomacy at the UN, of the European Parliament there in Brussels. How important is it for nations to move their embassy here to Jerusalem?
I think it's important for a number of reasons. I would say as a matter of protocol. No other nation would have their capital, the location of their capital questioned. I mean, it's a given. It's up to the Israelis to decide what is the capital of the Jewish state, and then for other countries to follow diplomatic protocol and just accept it and move their embassy to Jerusalem in this case. I also think it's a minimum sign of appreciation of the Jewish state and the Jewish people to just recognize the importance of Jerusalem. That goes back thousands of years. And who are we to say that the Jewish people don't have the right to Jerusalem as their capital, or that it should be divided somehow? I think this goes completely against all the logic of international politics today. We're not talking about dividing Berlin anymore. We're not talking about dividing Paris, even though there are those who have a different religion and ideologies. But in the case of Jerusalem, there are still so many nations who just treat it very differently.
Yeah, and as the Prime Minister said, there's a biblical promise of a blessing to these nations as they bless Israel. You're on the front lines of this battle over Israel. Tell us about what it's like to be there at the UN or the Human Rights Council or at the European Parliament as you advocate for Israel.
I think the first thing that we acknowledge is a lack of knowledge. You know, many people and very prominent political leaders still have this perception that there was a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital, and somehow this narrative of the Jews coming as colonialists and so on and so forth. And it's only when you go back to the historical facts and you say, well, listen, this is actually what happened. Just to mention San Remo, the San Remo resolution as a legally binding document. Nobody has heard about San Remo, and that's why it's so important that we can be there just to present the facts.
Yeah, and San Remo being the treaty that was signed after World War I, they really established a national homeland for the Jewish people in the land of Palestine. And that really is crucial for educating nations as well as the populace.
And as you know, Chris, we have this quest to see the very place where this happened, Villa de Vashan in San Remo, somehow be restored to a heritage center for the Jewish people, a place where they could come and hear about it firsthand, have a reception. It could be a research library, exhibitions, and this is something that we are praying and hoping very much that could become a reality. Perhaps this year, as Israel marks its 75th anniversary.
That would be a great thing, a great milestone for Israel, and help educate people the value of San Remo. Thomas Sandell, great to be with you again.
Thank you.
Up next, women across the Middle East team up in high tech, the inspiring initiative that's helping women become leaders in the tech industry. This month marks the third anniversary of the Abraham Accords, the agreements which normalize relations between Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Morocco and Sudan also joined the accords in the months that followed. The U.S. brokered the deal under the leadership of President Donald Trump, and it's resulted in increased cooperation between member countries, the sharing of technology and resources, and a recognition of Israel's sovereignty. Ties were further strengthened this week as Israel's Foreign Ministry Eli Cohen visited Bahrain, his first trip to any of the member countries. Morocco's President Aynam Mayara was scheduled to speak before Israel's Knesset this week, which would have been another first. His visit was postponed, however, because of a medical emergency. A direct result of the Abraham Accords has been increased cooperation across borders between members of the tech community. One Israeli initiative strengthened ties between Israelis and Arabs as it helps women achieve their potential in a high-tech world. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
It's called Fem Forward, a unique organization helping women climb the high-tech career ladder. And now it's making connections between Israeli and Arab women.
We started off trying to solve a very simple problem, but complicated, in that women in the tech innovation ecosystem, in high-tech companies, women and men start at the same level, but somehow men advance and women stay in the lower management level. So we wanted to close that gap.
Jerusalem Deputy Mayor and Femme Forward co-founder Fleur Hassan Nahum says the organization provides women in junior positions training and mentors to reach for the stars, and it's been successful for several years.
Our friends at the American Embassy here in Jerusalem said to us, well, why don't you take this to the Middle East? And our first destination was Morocco, where we opened this amazing program with 12 Moroccan women, 12 Israeli women, both Jewish and Arab women from Israel. And so far, it's been incredible, an incredible experience.
Wafa Bouchita from Morocco is a sales manager for an outsourcing company connected to Microsoft Canada.
There's this program that I saw one day on Facebook, and it said that it helped women, other women, to help women into progressing in their professional careers. And it was like, this is the time for me.
Bouchita credited the various courses offered and the value of her mentor.
Recently, I got promoted again. It was out of the blue. My mentor helped me with the entire process. How to write my CV, how to go through the interview, how to negotiate for my salary, and how to put my skills forward so that I can differentiate myself from other candidates.
Bouchita came to Jerusalem recently to complete her course and found the experience amazing.
At first, I thought there's going to be a culture shock because we're so different, but we actually were able to pinpoint a lot of similarities in how we live and how beautiful the differences are, to get to know different people, their perspective, and I'm sure that I'm going to make friends who are going to last forever.
Israeli Adi Shaz, an engineer at Samsung Israel, says she gained many tools.
It was amazing and exciting to meet women that I never get to meet in another opportunity. We're so much similar to each other. It's weird because the thing that are similar is a lot more than the difference between us.
Ida Kandil started MyTindi, which exports handicrafts from Morocco to all over the world, including Israel. She especially joined bonding with the other women.
I don't see people with nationalities. I see them as individuals. So to me, it was great to work with people. Everyone was very passionate about this program, and everyone had goals. You felt good, to be around professionals and be able to talk about our careers, our development.
During a gala at the Worldwide North African Jewish Heritage Center, Stephanie Hallett from the U.S. Embassy praised the program's spirit of cooperation and progress.
It embodies the Abraham Accords themselves, whose purpose is based on a very simple premise: that diplomacy and communication can promote greater stability, prosperity, and hope. So let's commit tonight, as we are committed publicly to support peace, prosperity, and women's empowerment especially, embracing the values that unite us all.
Co-founder Rachel Rosenzweig expressed her enthusiasm at being involved.
For me, just looking around the room and seeing what are now, I hope, my sisters from Morocco and Israel has been really, really special and actually mind-blowing to know that because of Femme Forward, we're all together.
Hassan Nahum sees helping women build confidence as the most important benefit and adds they've received requests from Africa and the U.S. to add to their work. And in the Middle East, they hope to do a program in Bahrain this fall. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, young Israelis are seeing the horrors of the Holocaust up close, thanks to the incredible technology of virtual reality. Along the lines of Femme Forward from our last segment, this next story is about a film made by 3 ultra-Orthodox Jewish visionaries who happen to be women. Their goal is to increase Holocaust awareness, especially among young Israelis. And they pulled off what had never been done before, filmed a virtual reality experience in Auschwitz. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
Steven Spielberg didn't get permission when he did Schindler's List. Why do you think you're going to get permission? Who are you? And when people said, who are you? I remember looking at Hani, my friend, and I told her, we're God's daughters. And we started to pray. We had a miracle. We got permission to film in Auschwitz-Birkenau during COVID for 3 days.
3 ultra-Orthodox women filmmakers pursued this production because of a passion for their community. Orthodox Jews often choose to be set apart from mainstream society and don't allow their children to travel abroad alone, so they rarely experience the reality of actually being in Auschwitz.
Most of the students in Israel go to Poland at the age of 17 or 18, but in the ultra-Orthodox community, it doesn't happen. We don't go. I lived in a village with a lot of people. When they came back with this super, super powerful experience they had, suddenly I felt that I've missed something. I have 6 children. As a mother, I can understand that people don't want to send teenagers outside the country without them.
Cohen shares how the technology intensified the sense of being alone, as well as feeling surrounded by the sights and sounds of Auschwitz.
Virtual reality, it's an amazing tool. The first time I put the headset on, felt like I was there.
Auschwitz, being closed by COVID, gave them permission to film with drones.
So we could have a drone shooter from the morning until night. And you'll see the film, there's this part when the drone goes inside Auschwitz. It goes up and you see the massive camp. We worked so hard on the sound of the film and the music. You can hear the people that are in the train that are coughing and crying and sound of babies crying, and that's not something you can see when you're on the ground. What happened is when we came back, everyone wanted to watch it. Ultra-Orthodox, Orthodox, not Orthodox at all, Christians and Muslims, everyone.
While Cohen and her team made this film for their community, they hope it goes much wider. A first step toward that goal came in January when they released it in London.
This is one of the greatest ideas about the next generation of educating for the Holocaust.
More than 70,000 Israelis have experienced this VR phenomenon, and Cohen plans to release it in New York later this year. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Powerful story. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.